This is First Encounter, a podcast exploring both the foundations and the future of historical romance. Welcome, everybody, to our first official episode of First Encounter. I am so excited to be joined today by two authors that I absolutely love and adore, Alexandra Vasti and Felicity Niven. So thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just going to take a second to introduce both of them, and then I'm going to let them talk a little bit about themselves and why they love historical romance. So Alexandra Vasti, as we know, is a literature professor by day, which is so, she blesses us with all her insights into the history. We just absolutely love it. She's also USA Today bestselling romance writer, which, you know, we are all familiar, I think, with her books and love that you're writing them. After finishing her PhD at Columbia University, she moved to New Orleans with her family. But her books have received so many standout reviews. She's gotten starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Booklist, Library Journal, Book Page, and Kirkus. That's incredible. And she's been featured in the New York Times, on NPR, Entertainment Weekly, People, and elsewhere on Best of the Year book lists. And we're just thrilled about it because you were doing great things for the historical romance genre. So Felicity is our other guest today, Felicity Niven. She turned to writing historical romance after having some very different careers before she started writing. I understand that myself personally. And she also has 2 degrees from Harvard, which is so impressive. And she is the author of the Love Lux of London series and the Bed Me books, which are both fantastic. So thank you both so much for joining me. Part of the reason I asked for you guys to chat with me together is because I know you guys are friends, and you also together run a fantastic book group called The Ungovernables, which is kind of a book read along on Facebook. So you guys read a historical romance book a month, and I think it's fantastic. I've not really been involved because my schedule is insane, but I want to be because it just sounds like so much fun. But I'm going to turn it over to you like I said I would. So Alex, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about how you got into writing, why you love historical romance, and then the same to you, Felicity, after we hear from Alex.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. I'm so happy to be here and honored to be invited. Yeah, so I have been reading historical romance since I was 11. I always sort of joke it's the longest running love affair of my life. I love historical romance so much. Yeah, you know, when I was growing up, I feel like most romance, or certainly most that I read, was historical romance. I mean, it was just a really big proportion of the market. So that was kind of what I grew up reading, what I fell in love with the genre. And I have just always had like a great love for history. You know, I went to graduate school, and I'm very much like my research is very historically grounded as well. So I guess it wasn't really until after I finished graduate school that I kind of felt like I had the research skills to be able to write historical, even though I always knew that I loved it and that it was, you know, such a great passion for me. But I always wanted to be a writer. Like I wrote my first romance novella when I was 14. I always knew that this was the job I wanted to have. I have an MFA in creative writing. So it's very cool that this is my job now. I feel very lucky.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well, thank you for me too for asking me to be here, Andie. Really appreciate it. So I am not a long time. I'm a late bloomer, late coming to historical romance.
Oh my!
Had read a couple, maybe. Had read of Forever Amber when I was before I was 10, which is technically not a historical romance because it's like. They called it The British Gone with the Wind because it was historical, but the ending is not a happily ever after like Gone with the Wind. But I remember loving the history, and I was like, oh, this woman has a great adventure with these men. But it was problematic, of course. But anyway, I had read a couple, but really it was 2021. And I had decided I was going to change careers. I had two other careers, but COVID made me realize that what I was doing wasn't working. I wanted to do something else, and I wanted to write. And I'd scribbled here and there, but I'd been an English major. I'd been on the verge of doing what Alex did and getting a PhD in English literature, becoming a professor, did something else. So anyway, my mother handed me a particular historical romance that I read, and I said, this is it. I love this. This is what I should be reading. This is what I should be writing. So that's how it happened for me.
I feel like my own journey is very similar to yours, Felicity. I'd read some books when I was younger, and like Alex said, like I feel like when we were growing up, it was kind of like the prevalent kind of subgenre within romance. You
Yeah.
didn't see contemporary as much.
See, I didn't know that because I think my big thought about romance when I was young were the who is it? She's a sister of an actress. She's the sister of Joan Collins.
Yes,
Jackie
Jackie
Collins.
Collins.
That was
I
my
knew exactly
idea.
who you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my idea, and she's contemporary.
She is.
So I wasn't even aware that historical was such a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what you were tuned into, or in my case, like what I saw my grandma reading. Yeah. But no, I think, for me, I've always been a huge reader. Writing was never necessarily it was something I always enjoyed, but it wasn't my main focus. I am certainly not one of those people who's been writing my entire life, like so many other authors I know. But I always enjoyed it, and I always loved storytelling. And I think for me, when I started really getting into, I'd read romance over the years, but I primarily read historical fiction, literary fiction. And during COVID, I just was like, I cannot handle anything else heavy because the whole world is heavy right now. And so I started reading romance pretty exclusively and just delved into it. And similarly, I was like, I need a change in what I'm doing with my life. And this was something where I was like, I feel like I could write this. Like, this fits kind of the stories I've always loved and kind of imagined in my head, because I was always writing in my head without, writing physically. And so, I don't know. It's just so fun. It's just something about it that is so intriguing to me. And I think we're at a place where we've seen so many other people like myself, kind of like you, Felicity, who discovered romance writ large, not necessarily historical romance, but romance in general, kind of around 2020 and beyond. We've seen it growing. We've seen more recognition, I think, in the mainstream.
Do you think that's really true? See, because I can't speak to that, because it was so off my radar that I don't really have any sense that the audience has grown or the awareness has grown.
I feel like it's reaching new people. I don't know if maybe it's grown, but I feel like younger people started reading it who maybe weren't previously, because I've just seen a lot of people express the same kind of thing that they started reading at that time.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's anecdotal, obviously.
Right.
So I do think there's sort of a narrative that that book talk, right? Like the rise of book talk has brought in all these new people to romance, and et cetera, et cetera. I have seen some people try to run numbers, like Andrea, I forgot what her last name is, but she does Shelf Love.
Yeah.
And she has said that it's not actually, there hasn't been a romance boom. But I know she was just looking at print numbers, and I think maybe a lot of the book talk audience is doing ebooks, right? And there's just no way to get hard numbers on that. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like the rise of romance bookstores is certainly.
Yeah, I was going to say hard number wise, maybe it hasn't changed, but I feel like there's a shift in visibility.
Right.
And maybe just public acceptance of romance or discussion of it. But I think book talk is certainly part of that. But where I feel like I've seen it most is in contemporary and romantasy and not necessarily in historical romance. I mean, there's been a bump with Bridgerton, as we know, in terms of certain people kind of being drawn to the genre. But it's interesting because I feel like where there's this moment where people are maybe a bit more tuned in, that I feel like traditional publishing hasn't taken advantage of that as much when it comes to historical romance. And so I'd be really interested, I guess, maybe Alec, both of you, but Alex specifically, in your thoughts as someone who has released books on your own and also now someone who has traditionally published. And from my perspective, I don't know if this is true, again, this is anecdotal from my perspective, but I feel like you're one of the few newer people I have seen in traditional in the last few years that like has really been embraced and been successful through the publishers. I feel like there's still people who have been writing in historical romance for a while, but I don't feel like I'm seeing them accept as many new authors into that space through traditional publishing. And so I'd be interested on your perspective of like how it's been for you in that space. Do you feel supported? What do you think is happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there have increasingly been fewer and fewer acquisitions of historical romances, particularly of debut historical romances. The year I debuted, I was in a debut group, and there were like 50 contemporary romance debuts that year, and there were 4 historical romance debuts, right? Like it was a very small piece of the overall pie. And I think, we've kind of seen that continue. There every year for the last few years, there have been 2 or 3, maybe 4. Like I feel like 4 was like a big year. Debut historicals. There aren't a lot getting acquired right now in traditional publishing. And it's just, it's a numbers thing. Like they're just not acquiring a lot of historical debuts. And I think that there are a number of reasons for that. I definitely think that I think that everyone is seeing it. That, I saw Sarah McLean say she used to easily move tens of thousands of mass market paperbacks in her first week. That is a huge number. Like most people are not moving tens of thousands of print copies in their first week. Even very successful people are not moving that. I mean, that's a ton of print copies to move. So I think everyone is seeing that's shrinking. One of the reasons behind that is that the mass market paperback size, audience interest in that has been diminishing for quite a long time. People used to buy a lot of mass market paperbacks. You would buy them in the supermarket. And people don't want them anymore. People have stopped buying them. And I know that, if you just read people's commentary online, they're like, oh, the publishers, but it's not the publishers. People are not buying them. The reason that they're not printing them anymore is because people weren't buying them. Like ReaderLink said that the number of mass markets that they sold dropped by 80%. Why are they going to keep printing them? They're not going to. There's no reason to print them if people aren't buying them.
Is that a shift, do you think, to people just purchasing ebook over print? Or do you think it's loss of readership or both?
I don't know. I mean, I think that you could come up with a million different possible explanations. Right. Yeah. I've certainly seen people postulate that that audience who was looking for a quick read at a lower price point has shifted to buying an ebook. I don't know. I mean, there's
a subscription service.
Yes.
Right. Or KU, right? Yeah. Like you can pay $10 and be in KU. I don't know. I mean, also demographics change, people like I can say like my mom, we used to always read mass market paperbacks, but when trade paperbacks became popular, she was like, I would much rather read this big book. Like it's easier to hold, it's easier to see, it's what I mean? So like readers age and have different desires and different wants and needs. So I don't think we know exactly, but I think that historicals were very associated with the mass market format, and I think they were very slow. I think a big problem with traditional publishing is that it's very slow to change. It's a big, unwieldy beast that does not turn on a dime. So I think they were very unresponsive to changes in the market. When I got my deal, they were like, do you want to be in a mass market with a clinch cover, or do you want to be in a trade paperback? And I kind of was like, I'm pretty sure I want to be in a trade paperback. I'm pretty sure I want an illustrated cover. Just thinking, sort of guessing that that's where things were headed, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I feel very lucky that was the decision that I made, because I think that had a huge impact on why my books sold, relatively well, my first series.
Yeah. And what's interesting, as far as being indie, and so many paperback copies are sold through KDP, and it's a little tricky to set up a mass market paperback size on the KDP platform. You can do it, but it's tricky, and they don't push it. They really want you to have 5x8 be the smallest size. This is so funny.
Yes.
We're talking about all this technical stuff. But anyway, I do want, if the fact that they, for their print on delivery systems, they really don't like that mass market paperback size. They like the trade size. And I think there must be something with the machinery that it is easier to sort of handle the covers that are a little bigger, not just people. So I do wonder how much of that formed, because I've got vision problems. I have hand problems. I'm getting into, I think I'm closer to Alex's mother's age than I am to Alex's age. I'm pretty sure I am. So the thing is that, but I read ebooks. But if you ask me about trade versus paper, mass market, I wanted to talk about also content.
Yes.
And I think there's a tension about historical romance in pleasing people that's worth discussing. That this has been on my mind recently about, well, because as a writer, you got to write to please yourself, right? But you do think about the market a little bit, and who your readers are.
It's unavoidable.
And the thing I've thought about recently is that there's kind of this paradoxical thing, is that people who are used to read historical romance in the 90s, in the early 2000s, have the same problem with historical romance in a way that new readers who come to it are, and that they both, but for different reasons. So people who traditionally read historical romance seem to go online and object to these modern things showing up in
sensibilities.
Their book. Yeah, and they're not talking about technical anachronisms, because I'm sorry, those books in the 90s, they're full of anachronisms, but they're talking about their idea of what history is and what historical people thought and acted and behaved and were based on what they have read before. And then so things show up in books and they go, oh, that's a modern sensibility. That's not my historical romance. I don't want that. And then people who are unfamiliar with historical romance and are coming to it read it, and they might have a problem with some of the archaic language or some of the things, the titles, etc., of the nobility or whatever. And in both cases, it's that they get torn out of the story. They lose their immersion in the historical romance, but for different reasons. That you've got these other people saying that's too modern, and you've got these other people saying that's too old-fashioned, and both of them are wrong. Right, of course, because it's neither. It's all a construct. We don't know how people thought. We know what people wrote 200 years ago, but we don't know what people thought. Anyway, so that's just been on my mind, conflict between what you present. And so in the end, I think you have to write to your own taste anyway as a writer.
Oh, for sure. It's like you can't please everybody. And it's interesting because I think, well, all three of us actually write in Regency era.
Right.
And, more and more I see people saying, we want something different. We want to leave the ballroom. Although I would argue that we're not focused on the ballroom either, even though we're in that era. But, and so it's interesting. Like in some ways we're trying to do something new, but we're also maybe the comfort read in a way too. We're not pushing, I don't know. I don't want to speak for us, but.
Well, can I say something interesting? Do you know, today I learned, it wasn't today, but it was only like a year ago, I found out that I didn't write Regency romances. Like I call myself a Regency romance writer. I didn't know it was a particular construct. I thought it was a romance in the Regency period, which is not what it is, but I called myself a Regency romance
I
writer.
feel
I'm
like
not.
that's gotten conflated a lot
Yeah.
recently.
I didn't
But
know.
yes,
I
there's
didn't
the
know.
era.
It did at some point mean a particular type of romance
It
book,
did.
but I
Yeah.
don't think it means that anymore.
Okay. But I heard now that Wikipedia told me today, because I looked it up. I was like, okay, let me get the technical definition. Wikipedia told me today that they at one point called things set in the Regency that didn't follow Regency romance rules, but were still romances, are called Regency historicals.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So
I don't
anyway,
know. I've just always said Regency set about my own. I don't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because I'm bad, I've not read any Georgette Hare. I'm like, Jane Austen is my inspo, not Georgette.
I know.
So.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Anyway.
I think, well, and I think I lost my train of thought, but something about it kind of being the comfort. And to me, it's the Jane Austen effect, right? Because so many of us have read Jane, she's been adapted so many times for the screen that we have almost kind of a certain comfort and familiarity with some of the normal trappings around that time period. And so I think a lot of people, like for me, as someone who's not as immersed in the history as Alex and has all the knowledge, like I feel comfortable writing in that world because I know the generalities people are familiar with, and then I can do some deeper dives into certain specific things. But there's a certain level of familiarity and comfort I think a lot of readers have with that because their exposure to it versus
but some of
diving
it's not.
into a new setting.
But some of it's not Jane. I'd argue some of it's not Jane, right? Because
Oh,
we're comfortable with dukes and ballrooms, and
mm-hmm.
really, Jane didn't do dukes and ballrooms. I mean,
She
she
didn't.
did dances, but not ballrooms. Anyway, I
Yeah,
just,
I mean it's a very well established alternate universe. You know,
Yeah.
like
Thank
we're
you.
very
Yeah.
familiar with the
Mhm.
rules of this. One thing that I thought was interesting though, I recently reread Whitney, My Love by Judith McNaught, which was my first ever romance novel.
Mhm.
I it really had a massive impact on me at 11. And so she really helped kind of establish the genre of historical romance.
Mhm.
When this
Yeah.
book came out, there were many regencies, as you say, Felicity, which were short, category length. They had very strict rules, kind of the things that Mary Balog came up writing.
Yeah.
Nora Roberts came up writing these little regencies. And Judith McNaught was like, well, I want to do it in this historical period, but I don't want to follow those like Regency rules. And it was actually rejected like a number of times by publishers. They were like, this doesn't fit. Like, this isn't what a Regency is. Like, it's too long, it's too sexy, it's too this, it's too that. And she didn't care, and she kept at it until it was published. But one thing that I thought was very interesting rereading this book recently is that she explains a lot of stuff. She's like, here's what a duke is, you know? And like, I would never think to do that. Like, I would just pop it in, assuming that my readers know what a duke is. Or if they don't, they can Google it, you know, which her readers couldn't do, obviously. But I thought that was very interesting, and it was such a huge book, and it had such a huge impact. And I thought, you know, I bet that's something that historical romance writers of today who are, I mean, we can't just rely on existing historical romance readers. We have to invite new people into the genre, right? Like, if we want the genre to thrive, we need to invite new people in. So I think that's something we could probably really learn from romantasy writers who do have to create this world building, and they have to explain what their terms of art are. They can't just assume their reader's going to go Google it because it's made up. And readers do it. Like, they love it. They dive headfirst into this. And I thought that was something that we could really learn from you know, McNaught in the 80s, from romantasy writers of today, is how are we inviting new readers into our books and not just assuming they already know or tell it, well, you can figure it out, do the work, you know, like, okay, well, they're not my students. Like, they're not students sitting in my classroom where I say, like, look it up, use your agency. Like, how can I frame my books in a way that's more accessible, that's more inviting, the way Judith McNaught did, you know, and obviously it worked for her.
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and what I love about that is that, yes, she invited new readers and she broke all the rules of the genre in writing this extremely long, complicated book that she insisted she was going to make more complicated. Every time it got rejected, she just made the book. They said, it's too long and complicated. She said, just wait.
Make it even
Right?
longer.
Watch me.
That she said, watch me.
I love
So
it.
that you know, that she wrote with what she loved and found people who it. But I like that idea of inviting people in. I hadn't thought of it that way.
I like that too.
Yes, and world building is really important because
I
we
think that's
all
good.
live to a certain extent in our own. I mean, we all write our own worlds. Yes, I'm borrowing some things from previous historical romance, but my Regency is very different from yours, Alex's, and very
It
different
is.
from Andie's.
Yeah,
So yeah, so it's interesting.
I know. I think you do break some of the rules, Felicity, I would say.
Oh, I
That's
know
one of
I do.
Yeah, that's one of the
I'm
things I
very
love
naughty.
about your books. Like,
Oh,
I
thanks.
think you write very distinct characters that are not like, I don't know. I mean, we all love complex characters, but I think there's a certain element of kind of fairy tale to historical romance, I would argue. And, so you want stereotypically there's like these big strapping heroes and then there's like the beautiful female, and you have such unique characters that maybe don't fit what we think of automatically as the mold. And so when I'm reading your books, I think I mentioned that, prepping for this, I read Convergence of Desire, which I've read before. I reread it and I was just so struck by what you do, well, with both of them, but with Harry, because there's a lot of people now writing neurodivergent characters, which I so appreciate having that representation, but you just push it so much further than I've seen other writers do. You just unabashedly, this is who Harry is. She is obsessed with mathematics. She has trouble socially. Like, you just go all in. And then we see how he really falls in love with her person, not just kind of this beautiful facade or this. He learns who she is and how to be what she needs and a partner to support her. And it's so much more beautiful and meaningful, I feel like, when you have these people we'd fall in love with in real life, but maybe wouldn't see as the hero or heroine of a book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're very brave and just very, like, you just do things so full-heartedly. I could never write like that. I'm very jealous. I still remember the first time reading Convergence, it's been like years, and I still like remember like every page I was like, "Oh my God, you could do that?" I was so amazed and blown away.
Yeah, I didn't know what you couldn't do.
No, it's okay.
I didn't. Yeah, so I didn't know what you couldn't do. So here's what's interesting about Convergence. So first of all, let me explain to people who might not have read it.
Sorry, everyone. Context.
No, it's okay. Harry is a woman, so
Yes.
it's Harry is a nickname for Harriet. So I didn't write MM. So people talk about Harry and Tommy, but it is Harriet and Thomas. But I do think someday I should rewrite it as MM. Anyway, it'd be less revolutionary if it was MM, actually.
Yeah, it
just
would.
because
You're
to make a
right.
man a mathematician would be like, so it's actually, it works better as MS. But anyway, what's interesting about that was, I don't have a diagnosis of autism. I do strongly suspect that I'm on the spectrum. I'm of an age that they didn't diagnose women very often, girls very often, and certainly not people who masked really well. They didn't diagnose. So but I know I am because I said to Alex when we talk about the ungovernable.
Yes,
but,
I'm getting
but,
there.
But I said to Alex about why I wanted, when we started the book club, I said to her, Alex, I said, people care more about the characters than they care about the words. People care about these characters. And she's like, yes, that's what people do. And I was like, really? I was an alien. I didn't understand. How is that possible that people cared about the characters more than the words? Anyway, so, what was interesting was, first of all, the person who edited Convergence didn't know Harry was autistic, didn't realize she was autistic when she read the book. So that was interesting. So not everyone feels that Harry is autistic. She said, I just thought she was obsessed with math. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And then I thank you for saying that about my characters. That is the most important thing to me, is that the people feel real, and that they're real to me. And so that is what's most important to me, is that they feel real. And it turned out to be, I think, a blessing for me that I didn't know very much when I started, because I was coming from other genres. Sure.
You just lean in. I love it. I love it.
Anyway.
And Alex, you create also certainly very memorable characters. I, again, in prep for this, I reread the Halifax Hellions, the duo of novels, the first two with Margo and Matilda. And it's coming out.
Paperback release in February.
I know. I was just going to say, it's so exciting. So I first read these when they were kind of your newsletter sign-up freebies, but they're coming out in print paperback. I'm so excited. February 17th, I think, is when they're releasing. Yep. Yeah. So very excited. So they'll be in everyone's bookstores in print, and you can get them. I'm very excited. I'll have to get myself a copy. But I just reread them, and I just, I was like, God, these characters are so... I'm amazed by how much you're able to do in the length. Like, it is such a complete story. They are so well drawn. I have yet to write a novella. I'm about to start one this month, and I'm terrified because you've got to do a lot in a little. Yeah, no, it's great. You do novellas so well. And I just, they're so memorable. I mean, these just Hellion twins who are, maybe they are and they aren't all at the same time. But like, my friend Selena Oliver, she is obsessed with Henry. He's like her one of her all-time favorite heroes, because like they stand out, right? And so I know this wasn't the first thing you ever wrote, I'm sure, but this was kind of some of your first things you put out where people first encountered you writing these books. So what makes these special, and what made you decide these were the people you wanted to bring into the world first?
And I wanted you to answer that, but I need to throw something your way, Alex. Yes. I just want to say what I think is brilliant about Alex's writing, because she was so nice to say something nice about me. But I have to say this. Alex. Alex writes the best hearts in the business, like people with such good hearts. And I don't understand how she can write about such good people, and there's actually a story to be told. But there is. She's a magician, that she infuses love and light. Talk about comfort reads. They're just full of like so much love, and you just know everything's going to be wonderful, but yet there's all this delicious angst on the way there, and you're like, but all these people are so good. How is this possible? Anyway, so Andie's question was, Andie's question was,
I like always imagine that like, oh, this book is gonna be like this book I'm working on right now. I was like, oh, this hero, he's like gonna be such a jerk, and he's gonna do this and that, and like I'm like 40 pages into the book, and I'm like, oh no, that never mind. Throw out that.
He's the nicest guy in the world. He's most wonderful. Yeah.
I wish I don't know. I think I'm not sure why. If I'm going to be spending all these hours in their heads, they need to be a nice person. I don't know. That's what I write. That's just what comes out. I have an MFA in creative writing, like I said, and my voice has always been very strong. Like it's always come out kind of the same. Yes. And like I have a contemporary book coming out next year or this year. Oh my God, this year. And I think like you could easily pick it up and know it's by me, like even though it's not historical, because my voice is just really strong, and it's always been that way. And it was a real problem trying to write like literary fiction, which is not funny, as a general rule. Like it's way, sort of restrained and bleak and sad and I'm just like writing stupid jokes. Like that's just what, like my voice has always come out very jokey and comical and lighthearted and, kind of, so beautiful. Yeah, I'm glad I've shifted to romance, because that's where I feel like my voice really has a home. So the Halifax novellas. So, all right. So here's what happened. The story of them is that I wrote, this book, Ne'er Do Well, which was my novel debut. I wrote
Yes.
that book, and that was the first book that I ever tried to publish. I had been writing obviously for a long, long time. That was the first book I tried to publish. So I
Right.
got an agent. We kind of revised it, and then they take it out to editors at different publishing houses, and they call that being on submission. And so the sort of thing that they say you're supposed to do is while you're on submission, you're supposed to write another book, right? So you stop thinking about your either when the book, your baby that's out there, being rejected every day.
Yeah.
And so I had gone with my agent, and I had sent her a synopsis for a new book, and I sent her the first few chapters. And she said, "Great, sounds good. Like, go for it." And I'm working on it, or I'm supposed to be working on it, and instead I wrote these novellas. In Ne'er-Do-Well, there's like this one line about these wild Halifax twins, and they do this and they do that. They're so wild. They're so, whatever. And I like fell in love
So
with them.
inappropriate.
Yeah, they're very shocking. Yeah, and I was like, what is their story? Like, why are they like that?
Yeah.
How do they become these kind of wild? And I just couldn't stop thinking about them. So instead of writing this book that I had approved, it was supposed to be writing. Instead, I wrote these novellas because I was just so in love with them. And so I had this idea. Again, I'm on submission this time. Well, it was actually, it was like a month, but I'm on submission for this, month. And I had this idea that I would put, they're twins, that I would put one twin on my newsletter as like a freebie, like sign up, get a little taste of my writing. And then I would put the other twin, I would self-publish it and like have it be on, you can buy it on Amazon or whatever. And I thought they would maybe mutually kind of like, maybe someone signs up on my newsletter and they're like, ooh, I like that. Let me like one click and buy the other one. Yeah. Or vice versa. Someone discovers me on Amazon, they're like, oh, I want to read the other twin story. Let me sign up for her newsletter to get it. So that was the idea that I had. But then Ne'er-Do-Well sold it was like 3.5 weeks. And I was like, oh no. That's so exciting. So they wouldn't let me self-publish it, like put it on Amazon.
Yeah. Okay.
But I had written them, and I really wanted the stories to get out there. So they agreed that I could put them out on my newsletter. So that was how. So they both ended up being newsletter freebies.
Well, that was a smart move on their part, because that got you kind of your initial audience that was then excited.
I remember telling. I was like,
and then they bought them.
And then they bought them. Yeah, I was like, I have like 400 subscribers, and they were like, okay, they were like so not impressed by my like 400, which I thought was like so.
I think it's fantastic.
400, that's so many, right? Yeah. So then eventually down the road, they acquired them as well, and now they're finally years later finally coming out in print. Yeah,
it's fantastic. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to circle back. As Felicity mentioned, I do want to talk about the Ungovernables, because I think it's so great that you guys have this reading group. And part of what I'm doing on this podcast and why I started it. So I'm talking with authors who are writing currently in the genre, but I'm also reading a lot of the older books that I've just not read because I am newer to the genre. And that's what you guys do. I mean, you read new and old, but I'm very interested in kind of how you select what you want the group to read. Like, what are you looking for in books, and how do people respond? Like, have you seen trends and through lines of the things readers really identify with and love, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
Well, let me have Alex definitely talk about book selection, because that's really her purview. I mean, I have input, I make a couple suggestions, but really Alex is the mastermind of the reading list and how it's structured. So I want to let her answer that. But I do want to talk real briefly about why the Ungovernables happened, Andie.
Yes.
And it's because I'm you. Yeah. So what happened was Alex and I met because Alex saw the cover for Convergence of Desire, and she needed covers for her newsletter novella. And so she said, "Who did your cover?" And so that's how we started talking. And then she read Convergence, and she's like, "Oh, I really like this." And I was like, "Well, I'm signed up for your newsletter. I can't wait to read yours." And then like a week later, Margo, Halifax hit the world, and I read. I was like, "Oh my God, I love your writing." So we became fangirls of each other. And I said to her in the fall of 2022, two. I
Two.
said
Yeah.
Ne'er Do Well was out on. I think it had just been bought. This was November of
Yeah.
2022, and
Interesting.
I said to her, I don't know anything about the store. I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't read any of these things, and people talk on Instagram. I don't know these references. I said, wouldn't it be fun if we started a book club that we ran together on Facebook, and we read great historical romance, and then I'll do it. Then I'll get educated, and you're going to educate me. So basically, I was like, let's do this together because it'll be more fun, and you teach me. And I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard in English literature, so I know something about reading books and talking about books.
Yes.
They weren't of this period. They weren't modern. They weren't romance. It was Shakespearean plays. But anyway, so I was like, I think I can, you'll help me figure out how to do this, won't you? So that was the origin. Is basically
I love it.
I was like, give me a list of books. We'll read them together. We'll get other people to read them with us too. Okay, here we go.
That's what I'm doing with this
But
podcast.
Alex, tell us about picking books.
And forcing people to read my favorite books is like the reason I became an English professor. You know what I mean? Like, it is literally like the purpose of my life. I was born for this. Yes, I want to do that so much. Yeah. So and I do think a lot about syllabus creation, right? Like, that's a big part of my job is like, how do I curate a selection of books that is doing the work I want to, well, first of all, that I love, right? Like, I don't want to spend 5 weeks in my class or a month in our group talking about something that I don't love. So it needs to be a book that I love. But also that's doing things that I want to do.
Yes.
So that's representing different periods, different, books. We've read books from the 80s and the 90s and literally like from every decade that historical romance has been popular. So we've read all that, different parts of the world, different different identity categories that our authors fit into, that the characters fit into. I mean, all of that is so important to me in my job. So I was just able to like kind of port that in, to creating our lists. But no, I think the first year especially, I was like Alex's faves. Like, that was the theme of the year.
And every book is a humdinger. Every book was a humdinger. Well, I gotta say, every book we read is a humdinger. Well, it's because you have excellent taste.
Oh, thank you so much. And now we're about to start our 4th year, right?
Yeah, we're starting our 4th year.
That's exciting.
And we are on Facebook. It's called The Ungovernables.
Yes.
And then Alexandra Vasti and Felicity Niven's. We wanted to call it Historical Romance Book Club, but we had to take out.
And I am going to put the information on this group so if you're listening to the podcast, it'll be in the episode description. It'll be in show notes on the website, YouTube. It's going to be down below. So everyone, you can see that. I will include the information.
Very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you asked, like, what do people respond to? And I mean, I think that what we have noticed is that the more popular the book, the bigger the response, and sometimes it's a little frustrating. It's like, we're trying to like read this, like this undiscovered gem that, that only has like 100 ratings. Like, we really want you to read it. And we'll get so many comments on when we do like Lisa Kleypas. We're like, okay, you already know Lisa Kleypas. Come on, guys. So I think sometimes it can be a little frustrating, but I also think that's normal. And it's to mix it up.
Yeah. And I think part of it is people live busy lives. So there are a number of people who will come in and chime in and want to join in the conversation who haven't read the book this year or for the club. They're not reading for the club, but they've read the Ravenels, which we did over a 2-month period. We read all the Ravenels. Or they've read the Bedouin Saga, which we also did as a series,
Right.
So they've read the greatest hits. They've read Lord of Scoundrels, so they come in and talk about it. So I think that's part of it, too, is why we get a lot of comments when a book is already popular. And I also want to say, and this isn't in terms of a numbers game, this is just looking at people saying, I love this book, or I'm so glad I read this, blah, 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 that they get introduced to through The Ungovernables. What people don't realize, I'm coming back to this about characters. What people don't realize is that actually what they like is great writing. Um, I have to say, people say, I love this character, I love this trope, and yeah, there are a few people, I guess, who are like cuckoo for certain tropes, but really, they love great stories.
Yeah.
With great prose. They really do. I mean, and people say, I just love this setting. And I was like, well, you love this setting because the writer did a good job. But anyway, so it's really fun. It's really fun, and my education is ongoing, and I very much thank Alex for taking me on as a pupil of historical romance. And I will say, if you join the club, we have pinned to the top a list of all the books that we've read.
All the books you've done.
And I would say, like, it is a fantastic syllabus of looking at what historical romance has to offer, with the subcategories including a historically influenced romantasy, because we do one kind of magic influenced book a year, which is so.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's
so
blending of genres, and I would say maybe that's a way to get back to an earlier point that you brought up, Alex, of how do we bring more people, new readers in, right? And I think romantasy is so popular right now, obviously, and I think that there's a way we can embrace some of what they're doing in the genre, like you were saying, introducing the world, being more conscious of that. But I think bringing in magic and twisting those lines a little bit, because we're writing in a time set that's removed, I think it lends itself easily to just kind of twisting that a little bit. I don't know how to do that.
I think romantasy provides another. Let's not talk about romantasy. Let's talk about romantic fantasy, and I'll explain why I don't want to say romantasy. But anyway, I think fantasy with romance in it, or romantic fantasy, just provides it's another degree of separation, right? Yeah. Because we're all looking for escape, which is why I brought up this thing about what tears you out of the story is the thing you don't like. You want the thing that brings you in. And the invitation that Alex was talking about. So I think there's another degree of separation, and we all are seeking escape, and so that's what's wonderful. It's very interesting. I'm kind of studying romantasy now too, and have read like the top 30 romantasy books. There are things in that genre that are very, very specific that I'm hoping don't make their way into historical fiction. Historical romance. But anyway, so yes, let's have magic.
I definitely feel like my new series that's starting this year, like the first one, I'll still have one out in summer 26, 27, 28. I definitely feel like it's like basically romantasy, just like with no magic. Like it's very it's like pirates and princesses and bodyguards, and like, I mean, it feels to me like much more like a romantasy. I don't. We'll see what readers think, because I feel like my
cozy, sexy romantasy. Cozy, sexy
romantasy. Yeah. But I mean, there's like assassins. It feels to me. It feels
intrigue.
Like there's intrigue. There's court politics. I mean, I just like put in a lot of stuff that I love. But I think my debut was sort of a more traditional historical romance, in the sense that like they're going to balls. There's the there's the
matchmaking.
They're matchmaking, right? There's a season, and now I have just gone fully off the rails, and I'm like, we need to hunt down this assassin who's like poisoning people. I mean, really, it's basically a romantasy with historical romantasy with no magic.
I love it.
I think it's just going to be really interesting to see where the genre goes. I really thought when I first got started writing like 3 years ago, Bridgerton had been really strong. Second season maybe was out. I don't know. First definitely was. And I was like, oh, we're going to have this resurgence. And then I kind of didn't see it happen. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, which we don't have time to go into right now. But I think I don't know, it's just really interesting because it felt like we were kind of poised and then maybe we didn't meet the moment. Um, but I don't know, I have this weird feeling now, like I don't know why, but I feel like we're kind of on the verge of maybe historical breaking out again, but it just feels
Hmm.
like there's kind of starting to maybe be a little bit of a new, renewed interest until heated rivalry took over. And now that's what everyone's talking about, which I mean, me too.
Yes, it should be.
Me too, as it should be. I love this. I love this for us. I'm like, let's take this energy into every corner of romance, and let's keep producing these great things. Um, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm rambling
Well,
now,
I
but
wanted to say something about trad not publishing
yes.
as much historical
Mhm.
romance and indie
Yes.
pivot to historical romance. People who've written not having contracts with traditional and pivoting to self-pubbing, because we're going to see that more and
Yeah.
more. And I
Yes.
wanted to say something about, in a way, what's interesting is that self-pubbed and indie books, I think, have the potential to be groundbreaking and interesting and innovative, and that could never get published by a traditional publisher.
Yeah.
And they also have the tendency to be extremely hidebound and conservative and copying in some way what's always been done before,
Yeah.
because it is so market driven and so close to the market in the way that traditional isn't, because of the time lag involved in traditional and the number of people involved. So I think we may see some real extremes, that we are going to see some things that don't sort of um, would never get published, that are just wild,
Yeah.
are crazy, genre mashups, weirdnesses, and then we're going to see a lot that sticks hews very close to what's always succeeded on Kindle Unlimited, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. So it's a little bit of dangerous. I think we might get something some really exciting books out of it, but I'm also concerned we might have some people very concerned about making money, as they should. We want to make a living doing this, and not trying to push the boundaries. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's
think
interesting.
a huge shift in traditional publishing right now is them snapping up self-published authors, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think that that is only going to continue and only going to accelerate. I think self-published authors are going to get savvier and not just take whatever deal comes their way, right? I think that they're going to get smarter and smarter about. I mean, not that they weren't smart, but just there was no precedent, right? And now there's
Right.
lots of precedent. Now we can see, oh, like, this self-published author kept her ebook rights and is
Mhm.
raking in all those ebook royalties instead of giving them up, and they still took her on for print, right? I mean, that's huge. So I don't know, I'm
Right.
getting very in the weeds here as far as traditional
Yeah.
publishing. So in terms of historicals, I think that it's very unpredictable, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think historical could pop off and become huge next week, or not at all. I mean, I think you just don't
Mhm.
know. But I think that if we see a resurgence of, or a not a resurgence, but a first surge of popularity for historicals on TikTok, if we
Mhm.
see people saying, "Oh my God, I loved this! You have to read it," and really see that energy
Yeah.
coming from a lot of content creators in social media spaces, then they're going to start getting picked up more and more for trad,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think trad is going to try to set the tone. I don't think trad is going to
No,
try to
I
make
don't think
it
so
happen.
either.
But I think
Yeah.
if we see that organically happen, then I
Mhm.
think trad will absolutely follow along and will pick
Yeah.
up increasingly more.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. I don't know. I encourage people to check out what's happening in the indie space because you can pivot more quickly. It is much more responsive. And I think there's fantastic things happening. I think the problem that we have, speaking as a self-published author, is discoverability because there's so many books out there. And when you don't have the vehicle of a publisher who's connected to all these traditional outlets to say these are the new books, when you don't have that network, it becomes very hard for readers to find new books for authors to be seen. And so that's another thing I'm hoping to do with this podcast is spotlight new authors and talk to them to say, hey, these are people doing some great things, right? And so hopefully you can find them and read their work. But I think it's hard. And so it's like we want the vehicle of traditional, but more of, I think, the innovation is happening right now in indie because it can move more quickly.
The most important thing is the book is forever.
Yeah.
That helps me as I go, the book is forever. Yeah. Things come and go, but the book is forever. And I think about horror and that how horror was this thing. It was Stephen King, and that was it. There wasn't any other horror. It was all Stephen King, and that was it. And then horror took off on television, and it's, all the rage. So
it's having a resurgence.
Yeah.
Horror romance is a thing. I've not read it, but I know it's a thing in romance as well. But I know it's becoming. I have so much I need to read. I just don't have enough time in the day to read everything I want to. I wish I did, but. Yeah, but I know I would say, for authors, like you were talking about how in self-publishing we can pivot more to market trends. And I know some people who've done that really successfully. I don't know how to do that. I wish I knew how to do that because I'd love to make some more money. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I just don't know how to write. You're never going to please everyone. You're never going to please everyone because one comment you get is the complete opposite of the next comment you get on what people are looking for. And so I've just learned, like, I just need to write the book that makes me happy. I'm writing the books I want to read.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's all I know how to do. And I just hope other people like the crazy stuff inside my brain. That's where I'm at the end of the day,
Yeah.
And so I just want to thank you both so much for being willing
to
dive into some conversation with me as I'm figuring out what this is and where we're going. But I just love talking about historical romance with others who love it as much as I do.
Yay.
Thank you so much. It was a delight to be here and chat with you.
Very fun.
Come back anytime.
I appreciate it so much. So Alex's next release is the print copy of the Halifax Hellions. That's coming out in bookstores on February 17th. Felicity, what is next from you?
Oh, well, I do have something coming out this spring.
Yay.
I'm not at liberty to talk about it because I haven't finished writing it yet.
That's fine. That's fine.
But it will come. It will be published in May. Probably.
All right. So new stuff coming from Felicity, which is very exciting. In the meantime, she has a couple fabulous series out there. And Alex also has her books out that are just fantastic. They both have books you can get for free when you sign up for their newsletter. So I will have those links included as well. So that's really exciting if you just want a way to check out their writing. And if you guys want to talk more about historical romance, if you think that there's things we only touched on, you want to discuss more, I have started a Discord for the podcast. You can just fill out a simple form to ask to join, and I will send you the link to do that. We're already getting started in discussion online. So once you've listened to this episode, if there's things that you want to chat about, we can do that. So feel free to join that. I have also started a Patreon, which is weird because the podcast just started. But the reason I've started it now is that I have a book coming out at the very end of January. And the perk of becoming a Patreon is that you get an e-copy of that for free. Well, not for free. It's part of your membership. So sign up now if you want to get an e-copy of Beguiled when it comes out on January 30th. And again, all the information for this is included in the description of the episode below. So again, Alex, Felicity, thank you so much for joining me. I could have talked with you guys seriously for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. So have a wonderful time, and everyone go join the Ungovernables and talk books with Alex and Felicity, and join the Discord and discuss them with me as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andie.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.